Welcome to Call to Serve. There's nothing like young priests and seminarians when we're talking about vocations, still so filled with energy, still so fresh in their ministry. We're joined today by a young, recently ordained priest, Father Brent Maher, who's joining us to tell us his story of his journey through formation and how he learned that he was called to serve. Welcome to our program, Call to Serve. Today we have one of those young priests who still smell a little of the chrism oil that they received in their ordination. We are joined today by Father Brent Maher, who is currently the associate pastor at the Catholic Church of East St. James Parish. He's going to tell us a little bit about his story and how he discerned his vocation. Welcome, Father Brent. We'd like to ask you a little bit about your story and how did God make it clear to you that this is where He called you?
That's something I've had to question a lot, and unfortunately, over the years, going through seminary formation, even now as a priest, as you know, we get the question, "How did you know?" So often. And for me, it was a very gradual process. I know, I have friends of mine who they were practicing with their cookies and milk when they were 3 years old, dressed and play mass. My story is not exactly like that. It's a little different way, as the Lord always takes us. But for me, it was just again something gradual that happened, especially in my teenage years. I was religious growing up. I was baptized Catholic. I actually went to the Methodist Church for several years until I was about 11 years old. I was confirmed Methodist on my birthday at 11 years of age. And then shortly afterwards, my mom had this desire to come into the church and did so. And we ended up coming back into the church. And they kind of brought me along with them, certainly, and was involved in the youth group, but, really kind of struggle with understanding God, as with so many teenagers do, question God, went through a spell where I wasn't sure that God was even real and this kind of thing. But thankfully, my parents were able to get me involved in our faith community in Denham Springs at Immaculate Conception, and got involved in the youth group and some of the diocesan youth activities. And through that, towards the end of high school, began to realize that there was something I hadn't noticed before that I was supposed to be attentive to. There's something that I was kind of missing in my life, a certain piece of the puzzle. And it was during my first years of college that I kind of discerned that was probably the priesthood. But I was a little reluctant to go there just yet. I had my own plan already in place of all the things that I intended to do. My parents, mom and stepdad owned a couple of grocery stores, and so they were kind of training me from a young age to kind of take that and continue the family business on, in a sense. And so I had my job route planned, and I was just looking for the lady to marry, and looking for the house and the kids and all this kind of thing in the future. But again, the Lord kind of did what He always does, and just kind of gently guided me to the place that He desired. And thankfully, I was able to be receptive to the grace. And sometimes it takes a little extra push. Some of us a little harder headed than others. But then, to be able to respond to that initial call, and then really to finally say yes to the idea of the seminary, and then to pursue it. But kind of start to finish there was from the first idea of having an idea, maybe being called to the priesthood, to actually saying yes was about a 2.5 year span that the Lord kind of, like I said, gradually brought me along to help me connect all the dots together. So.
Well, that's wonderful. As I often do on this show, I'm going to take some of the pieces that you've already shared, see if we can maybe go into them a little bit more in depth. You say that you were raised as a Methodist. So in your family, would you say that there was a foundation of faith? Were you a prayerful family? Was this something that you were encouraged to do? Or was it a family that wasn't particularly practicing?
Yeah, I mean, we were certainly a religious family. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was a religious person of any sort. I know I would often hear my parents coming down the hallway, getting ready in the morning, and I could hear their shoes on the hardwood floor, and that was my cue to do my best Ferris Bueller impersonation and try to sleep and let the parents not wake me, so I could try to get out of going to Sunday church. But there was certainly, a religious atmosphere in the family. There's actually kind of a trend. My mom was raised Baptist. One of my uncles is a Baptist minister here in Baton Rouge. My grandfather was very active in the Baptist church in Denham Springs. His father was a Baptist minister in the area too. And so there's, always been a very strong sense of faith within our family. And I think it's kind of funny that they kept having all these Baptist ministers show up, and then they brought me to the Catholic Church and they got a priest out of the deal on this end.
Yes.
So certainly it was a religious upbringing. Again, not being Catholic, we didn't have family rosary and a lot of these kind of things, that some Catholic families do. But there was, again, a respect for the Lord, kind of importance of trying to live the faith, trying to be, a good person, a person of virtue. So that was certainly present.
Well, that's good, because I think sometimes a lot of the stories that we hear from people on this show obviously come from Catholic backgrounds. And so it's interesting to be able to speak about that foundation of faith can be laid, and though it might miss some components that we will later add as Catholics, it also can serve as a platform for God to still be stirring within someone a vocation, even though they would be very surprised to find out where it will lead in the end at that time. You said that as you were a teenager, there began to be some stirrings that made you think that maybe your life with God, that your life in ministry, that there might be something there, that there may be some sparks. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you know that? What did you experience that maybe made you feel that there was more to this relationship with God than maybe an occasional Sunday visit?
Yeah, I know that there was, like I said, I mentioned there was a time where I didn't really have much faith. There was a lot of questioning, challenging, almost, oftentimes even rejecting the Lord. Just kind of the difficulty of teenage life, as happens so often, But there came a time where, again, so often I feel like the Lord just gradually brought me from one place to the other in a lot of senses. But there came a time where I realized first that the Lord was real, that He was out there. And then secondly, as you said, there's that necessary second step of, well, if He's real, I've got to live like it, And so, it was that first kind of initial conversion that was formative for me, and first growing in the faith and understanding that I need to be involved in the community. And so that's when a lot of the youth activities started to really kind of ramp up a bit, being more involved. But even in the midst of doing that, of doing some of the service activities, doing some of the prayer activities and stuff with the church and in our community, I still began to realize that maybe there was something that I didn't get yet. And it happened most clearly. It came to me while we were on a retreat over in Texas. Our whole youth group had gone for what I think was a week-long retreat with the NET team, the young adults who travel around the country and do ministry. And it was during that, it was just a powerful week of just God's grace kind of being injected into my life and into our whole youth group. And it was there that I kind of realized that I was okay, but that I still wasn't there yet. That piece was still missing. And so that's what kind of pushed me to kind of seek a little bit more deeply, what's this more that God wants of me, and I was kind of hoping maybe could be a youth minister or have some, again, service-oriented service in the church. I didn't think it would be so far as to be called to the priesthood. That was a nice little curveball the Lord kind of threw me a few months down the road whenever I was a little bit more open just to the idea.
Well, it's an interesting story because it obviously shows the evolution. Is there a God? Yes. Well, how do I have to live if there's a God? Well, maybe this God has a plan for me. So, I mean, you're obviously going through the spiritual maturity stages, that as you're going through these, you're asking deeper and deeper questions. That is a natural part of someone who has a living relationship with Jesus, that we begin to say, well, I want to do what you want me to do, and not just necessarily what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's good that you're walking through that, because I imagine that even some of the people watching right now, they might be in some of these stages, maybe a rebellious stage, maybe I believe in God, but I don't think he really cares about me, and different parts of that journey. And they can learn from the fact that this all happens over time, that you begin to grow into, God has a plan for me. And who knows where that will lead, sometimes to very surprising places.
Absolutely.
So you're getting this feel, God has to play a more active role in who I am and what I'm supposed to do. Priesthood. How in the world do you end up there?
Yeah. Well, that was the fun part. Is like I said, I had the idea, it was in the back of my mind. And actually decided, I'm going to try to take some time and not get caught up in all the other stuff of the world, and just spend time with the Lord, and immerse myself in prayer and try to see, if you're calling me to something, I need to know what it is, so I can go ahead and continue on the path, right? And so I did, it took some time, but then high school kind of got the best of me a little bit again. This was my senior year of high school, so I was kind of getting the tail end. And all that kind of just started to fade a little bit, starting to look at college and the things come afterwards, and started dating a young lady, and we got very serious, and so got in that relationship with her, and started thinking, well, the idea of priesthood kind of came up a little bit. There came a time actually when we were talking that I mentioned that I was starting to think about the priesthood a little bit, and of course she thought it was a wonderful thing, and both of us in the place where we were in the relationship, it was more of a, oh, that's nice, because we didn't think anything was going to come of it. We thought we were going to continue our relationship and ultimately get married, and so that's kind of what was in my mind along the way. And so whenever the priesthood started to creep in, I started to back off a little bit, and so actually I graduated high school, and then I went off to college. Actually stayed home and went to LSU for a couple of years, and so it was there that the Lord started bringing the priesthood up a little bit more and a little bit more loudly, a little more forcefully, and that's the point where I really backed off, and I tried to play the game: if I don't talk to you, you won't talk to me. And so I essentially quit going to Mass, quit going to all the things of the church, dropped out of all the youth activities and this kind of thing, and kind of went the way of work and school. And in the hopes of the Lord would leave me alone and let me live my life as I wanted. Again, kind of still in that process.
In the boat, Jonah.
So, yeah, exactly, in the boat. And so we, went out and I lived the life of running from the Lord, the life of Jonah in a sense for my time, for a good year or so. But ultimately, I was at LSU one day and just sitting on the steps and was just kind of tired of running. And I just said, okay, Lord, well, if you want me to be a priest, you're going to have to do it. I said, I'm not breaking up with my girlfriend. I'm happy. She's happy. I think we're good. So if you want it, that's on you. Sometimes when we put the things in the Lord's hand, he surprises us even bigger. She broke up with me that night. And the first thing out of my mouth was, well, I guess I'm going to seminary now.
Well, there you go. To dare the Lord is a dangerous thing because he listens to us. We're going to take a quick break here. As we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how God answered your challenge and how he got you from this place at LSU to saying yes to his call for your life. We'll be right back with Father Brent.
Do you need a little light in your life? Tune in to the next episode of Beacons of Light, where we'll share the story of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in action, serving God's poor and homeless. We'll share stories of our volunteers and our supporters, making the gospel come to life for those in need.
Welcome back to Call to Serve. We're having a good time here with Father Brent talking about his call to service and how he knew he was led to the priesthood. And when we left off, he had basically just dared God to make him do his will and was telling us how God responded almost immediately to your challenge. So God seems to be responding and you recognizing that it's connected to the challenge that you gave to God. Were there any other obstacles that stood between you and the seminary before God was able to get you there?
Not really. I went home and my heart was resolved and it was amazing. I had a peace like I'd never had in my life. Kind of finally realizing, okay, not only am I called, I think I'm called, but that I'm finally going to take the step to go. And there was just a lightness to my heart that my mom was surprised to see, because I came home and I told her my girlfriend had broke up with me, and she knew that we were together for about 2 years at this point, and I was pretty committed to the relationship, and yes, I wasn't a basket case, and she was totally confused by it, and so I didn't really mention the reason I wasn't a basket case just yet. So I kind of held off on the secret of the priesthood for a little while, for a few weeks more. But just allowed it to rest in my heart for a couple of weeks and just let the Lord continue to say, yeah, you're on the right path. And, went to confession, went back to Mass and started going to daily Mass, which of course was the immediate clue to all the little ladies at the church that, oh, he must be going to think about being a priest, And so
nothing like daily Mass to get you on the right track, huh?
Exactly. I just dove right in, so was able to get involved with that. Went and spoke with a priest about how do I know this is real and what are the steps, what are the steps to go in the seminary, and so started the process. Met with the vocation director. And started going through all the steps, and this was the first week of November that all that happened, and so I was thinking, well, the next semester is in January. I'll just go, we'll slide right in. I'll go to seminary in January. Everything's going to be great, and except and talking with the vocation director, he said, yeah, you can start next August, and I said, August, and I was like, oh man. Got to wait till August. So, but that was actually a wonderful gift to me, because again, it was more time to continue to just immerse myself in the life of faith, kind of renew myself for the time that I was outside, not with the Lord, kind of allow Him to fill my life back up, and to really prepare me during those 9 months in preparation for when I was actually went back to seminary, or went to the seminary for the first time rather.
That reminds me of the verse in Scripture where God says, I will restore what the locusts have eaten, what the drought has taken from you. And so it sounds like you had this opportunity to be restored, that God said, I want you to be able to enter in, not as a man empty, but as a man refilled.
Amen.
So what a wonderful blessing that was for
Absolutely.
you. So, okay. You've passed every hurdle now, right? Everything's easy from here on out, right? No more challenges?
One would think. One would think.
So, how did God continue to confirm that call for you through the difficult times of formation and studies?
Yeah. Well, it was definitely difficult the first few weeks. I was a man whose mind was much more mathematics, science, practical. Give me numbers and formulas, and I can work all day long. And was thrust into a philosophy program where you're trying to understand what is being itself. And they're using all these words, and I'm going, I have no clue what you're saying. I'm completely lost. So about 3 weeks in, I was a little frustrated and honestly had a little sit down with the Lord going, okay, I'm not sure I got the reading right. I think I may have missed the call. But he spoke to me. He spoke to me through my prayer and through just confirmation of talking with other brother seminarians during that time, and realizing that it wasn't me, that had missed the call. It was just the difficulty of transition to a new type of study. And thankfully, I had just a wonderful community of brother seminarians to build me up in that. That's something that I hadn't really experienced before, and so. To journey with them. I spent 2 years at St. Joseph's Seminary College in Covington, St. Ben's, as we belovedly refer to it as. And so I spent a couple of years there, and it was during that time that I really began to, again, just enjoy so much the religious life. again, going from such a kind of a conversion along the way in so many different steps. Those 2 years were so transformative in so many ways. And being there with the Benedictines kind of got me interested in community life. And one of my best friends was a scholastic for their community, and so he would go to their night prayer, services each night, 2 or 3 times a week at least. I would tag along with him, and so they all just kind of started wondering, is he going to come along too? Is we going to get a buy one get one type of deal here? And so it was that kind of reflection that led me to actually consider community life in a different sense than the diocese. And so upon graduating the seminary there after 2 years of studies, decided to withdraw from seminary formation officially, and went and discerned with a few different communities, went and discerned with the Benedictines at a monastery, went and visited with the CFRs in New York for a little while, 2 very different communities,
Yes.
You can imagine. And then visited with some others, and just talking with other friends, and through a lot of prayer, came to see, that there was still a desire to be a priest. I just had no clue where the Lord was leading me, and so that was part of that frustration of that year. Was just many holy hours in the chapels at my home parish or various parishes where I was going, Lord, okay, where am I going? Just that some of that frustration of not knowing the way.
Well, oftentimes when people think about the call to priesthood, it's yes or no. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes on this show, we'll talk about the call within the call. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm called to be a priest, but what kind of priest? Mm-hmm. What is my ministry supposed to be as that type of priest? So I can be a diocesan priest, but be a canon lawyer. I can be a diocesan priest, but be a pastor. I can be a religious priest in a lot of different ways. So there's this constant discernment that goes beyond just yes or no to the priesthood, or yes or no to whatever ministry God's calling me to, but finding that there's a lot of variations within there that does it. So you're talking about really a secondary type of discernment, that I've said yes to the priesthood, but what type of priesthood and how am I going to serve as a priest? Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting thing you bring up, because so often people mistake it as just a one-time choice.
Yeah, that would be nice and easy, though.
Yeah, well, it would be.
I was lucky to have caught it the first time. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pick it up a second time when the Lord put it in my hands again. But thankfully, I was able to discern, and it came through an interaction with my pastor at my home parish, who's actually the pastor at the parish where I serve now, an associate. Okay. So it's neat to have that connection with him continuing even now as a priest. That in the middle of all that discernment, I was on a home visit for a little while, just relaxing for the holidays about this time of year, around Christmas time, and just went up to the church office to drop by, see how he's doing, let him know where I am in my crazy travels and this kind of thing. Chatted for a little bit, went to confession with him, and at the end he said, all right, Brent, it's good to see you, have a good day. If you need anything, let me know. And I said, thanks, Father, and went home. And whenever I got home, I kind of sat down and thought about it. I said, that's what I want to be. Mm-hmm. I said, I want to be there with the people, so that whenever somebody,
needs
somebody
their
comes
priest
in the office, they need the priest,
That's right.
that I can be around. And so that's what kind of compelled me back to turn again towards the diocese, and really realize that all those other visits were blessings, each in their own way. They helped me to grow now as a priest by the different experiences that I had. But ultimately, it was the Lord again kind of preparing my heart to come back here to serve as the priest of the Diocese of Baton Rouge.
And of course, it requires you to learn new skills, mm-hmm. because as a religious, I can say for us it's very easy. Our communities are formed for us, mm-hmm. whereas for a diocesan priest, besides some community he might share within the parish, to have community with other priests, to have community in other ways, it requires more work on your part. And so clearly God was probably leading you to realize that as a diocesan priest, there's going to be some responsibility on you to make sure that community desire that you had could somehow be realized. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, if you're not joining a pre-made community, you're going to have to find a way for community to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things that I found actually be very helpful in our diocese. As Bishop Munch, we send all of our seminarians to just the 2 colleges locally, the St. Ben's, for undergraduate degree, and Notre Dame in New Orleans for your master's degree or your graduate degree. And so what that does is it permits all of the guys for our diocese to be together for really an extended amount of time, 5, 6, 7, 8 years together. Some of the guys will spend in formation, which actually helps to build a very solid community. And so that's one of the things that I was extremely blessed to find is just the closeness, of having, like you said, so many brother seminarians in the larger sense, but also even in the smaller sense of just the Diocese of Baton Rouge. And that's something that we tried to foster during that time, having a monthly, diocesan night where all the Baton Rouge guys go out, and have BR night. And we go out and just enjoy time together. And tried to bring that even into the priesthood now. I know a lot of us who are kind of more newly ordained still continue that trend. A lot of us just getting together and not necessarily for anything formal, but we got the LSU game coming up. You want to come over and we'll cook up some gumbo or something. Yeah, it sounds good.
Again, informal community taking the place of what might be a more formal setting of community. Mm-hmm. Well, Father, we really do want to thank you for coming and sharing with us your journey, because obviously your journey has some twists and turns that are a little unusual, of coming back to Catholicism from a Protestant upbringing and really some of the journey that you had in terms of your discernment and your discernment further into diocesan life. And so we certainly want to thank you for that, and really to remind all of our viewers that vocations, they're such an important part of our church's life, and God is calling each and every one of us to serve Him in some way, and that we need to pray for young people that they find that way to serve Jesus in their lives, whether it's priesthood or religious life or lay ministry, marriage, all the ways that God calls to serve, and to please continue to pray for those who minister here in the diocese, for our bishop, for our priests, for our deacons, religious sisters, for all of those who are serving here in the diocese, because your prayers are an important part of our faithfulness in our call to serve.